You'll end up old and broke. While I was living in a small rental, months later, after I bought a villa with my own savings, my son appeared at the door and said, "Perfect. My wife will love raising our kids here." I just smiled, reached for my phone, and made one quiet call. Follow the twists of this story to the very end and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this journey travels. Body. My name is Nan, and at 66, I thought I'd experienced every shade of life's cruelty. I was wrong. The invitation to my son Desmond's birthday dinner arrived on elegant cream cardstock, the kind his wife, Brienne, insisted on for everything. "Join us for an intimate family celebration," it read in her flawless handwriting. I should have known better. Nothing Brienne planned was ever truly about family. That afternoon I dressed with care, the navy dress with tiny pearl buttons Richard had always loved. My silver hair freshly styled despite my careful budget. Desmond was turning 38. Some occasions deserve effort. The restaurant glittered with crystal chandeliers and crisp white linens that looked as if they could slice paper. As I followed the hostess, I clutched my small purse a little tighter. Desmond rose to greet me, briefly, formally. For a moment, I glimpsed the little boy who used to run into my arms after school. Then, the moment was gone. Brienne's greeting was a thin smile that never reached her eyes. "Nan, how lovely you look. Presentable." The word landed like a slap. Presentable as if I were a charity case. Through dinner, conversation drifted toward money and success. When I mentioned volunteering at the community center, Brienne laughed softly. "How quaint. Bingo with the other ladies. How fulfilling that must be." Desmond said nothing, cutting his steak with mechanical precision. When she stepped away to the restroom, I tried to reach my son. He pulled his hand back. "Mom, about where you're living," he began, voice uneasy. Before he could continue, Brienne returned, eyes gleaming. "We're worried about you," she said smoothly. "You're not getting any younger. Maybe it's time for a place that offers assistance. Assisted living." The words chilled me. "I managed just fine," I replied, barely above a whisper. Her laugh was a soft blade. "Of course you think that. But really, tiny rental, modest meals, volunteering just to pass the time. It's rather sad." I sipped my water, spine straight. I knew exactly what I'd do next. "You'll end up broken alone. Wouldn't it be better to have some dignity in your final years?" The words struck like physical blows, cold, casual, and delivered with a smile. My own daughter-in-law had said it as if she were commenting on the weather. The confrontation. I looked to my son Desmond, waiting for him to speak up, to defend me. Silence. He stared at his plate, jaw tight, lips pressed shut. Brienne leaned back, clearly enjoying the moment. "We're only thinking of what's best. Desmond works so hard and we're ready to start a family. We can't be expected to look after you too. Look after me." As if I were a burden instead of the woman who raised him alone, who worked double shifts to pay for his college, who celebrated every victory and soothed every heartbreak. I stood, legs trembling. "Excuse me," I whispered, grabbing my purse. "Where are you going?" she called after me. I didn't answer, leaving the table. I walked past tables of families who actually seemed to care for one another, past couples holding hands over candlelight, until the night air hit my face. Cool, freeing. Behind me came the restaurant door, footsteps. "Mom, wait," Desmond called. I turned, a flicker of hope sparking. Maybe he'd apologize. "You can't just leave." "Brian feels terrible," he said. I searched his eyes for the boy who once defended me on playgrounds. She was only trying to help. We both were, and there it was, another defense of her cruelty. I realized then I had already lost my son. "Tell her not to worry about me," I said quietly, unlocking my car. "I'll be just fine." A new resolve. Back in my small apartment, I sat in Richard's old chair and wept until no tears remained. But beneath the grief, something else stirred. Harder, steadier. Determination. They thought I was a poor, lonely woman with nothing left. They were wrong. Morning brought clarity. I brewed Richard's favorite strong black coffee and spread a stack of papers across the kitchen table. Bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds, proof of a life built carefully and wisely. Most people would be shocked to learn the old woman in a modest rental held assets worth over $2 million. Richard's decades of smart investing, Apple stock from the 80s, undervalued real estate, a diversified portfolio, had quietly grown for years. When he passed, he left everything to me with one note: take care of yourself. You deserve better than anyone knows. The truth. After Desmond married Brienne, I'd chosen simplicity on purpose, downsizing, driving an older car, wearing understated clothes. I wanted to see who they were when they believed I had nothing to give. Last night gave me my answer. The phone rang. Desmond's name lit the screen. Again and again. Finally, I answered. Hello, Desmond. Mom, thank goodness. About last night, his voice strained. What about it? Brian feels awful. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. I almost laughed. How did she mean it then? She's just concerned about your future. We both are. We love you, love. The word felt hollow now. I see, I said evenly. So you'll forgive her? He asked. I smiled to myself. Quiet, certain. The power had shifted, and he didn't even know it. When Brian texted an invitation, come to dinner this weekend, I want to apologize. I pictured her rehearsing in the mirror, practicing the perfect note of fake remorse. I'll think about it, I replied, already knowing I'd show up on my own terms. Awakening strength. After the call, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, remembering the woman I used to be. Before Richard passed, I was confident, social, the heart of every charity event and dinner party. Grief had made me small, but Brian's cruelty the night before had awakened something fierce. The strength that carried me through raising Desmond alone, the determination that built a career when women my age were told to stay home. I dialed my attorney, Margaret Chen. Nan, how wonderful to hear from you, she said. Complicated, I replied. I need to update my will. There was a pause when I told her, remove my son as beneficiary. That's significant, she said gently. I've learned enough about his character, I answered. It's time. Instead, every cent would go to Silver Connections, a charity Richard and I had supported for years, an organization that offers companionship to elders abandoned by their families. People like me, taking back my life. After the paperwork was set for that very afternoon, I opened the closet I'd ignored for months. Behind my everyday clothes hung the wardrobe of the woman I once was. Designer suits, elegant dresses, jewelry Richard had given me for anniversaries. I slipped into a black Chanel suit. It fit like it was waiting for this day. No more hiding my light to protect the feelings of those who didn't value me. At Margaret's office, I signed a new will, then stopped at the salon. Back so soon? The stylist asked. I'd like a change, I said. 2 hours later, my silver hair was a sleek bob that took years off my face. I felt lighter, alive. That evening, I poured a glass from the wine collection Richard and I once shared. Raising it to his photograph, I whispered, You were right, love. I do deserve better. A new Nan. Desmond's text came, just as I set down the glass. Mom, Brian really wants to make things right. Sunday dinner? She's making your favorite pot roast? I stared at the message before typing back. I'll be there. But I wouldn't arrive as the grateful, diminished woman they expected. I'd come as my true self, the woman with means, with options, and nothing left to lose. A home worthy of the real me. By Monday morning, I was house hunting. The weekend had been a blur of research, but nothing prepared me for the reality of what I could afford. At the third property, my realtor, Patricia, smiled. I think you're going to love this one. She was right. A grand colonial mansion on 2 acres, ancient oaks shading 6 bedrooms, 4 baths, a library with ceilings that reached the sky, and a kitchen straight from a design magazine. Price tag, $850,000. To most, a fortune. To me, well within reach. I stood in the foyer, sunlight pouring through tall windows, and felt Richard's presence as clearly as if he'd walked beside me. This was more than a house. It was proof. The woman they underestimated was gone, and the real Nan had finally stepped back into the light. The reveal. It's beautiful, I breathed, running my fingers along the marble counters. Through the bay window, a garden stretched toward a quiet pond and a wooden bridge. The previous owners were an older couple, my realtor Patricia explained. They kept everything immaculate, new systems, flawless grounds. And that library you mentioned? It's a dream. I pictured myself there. Leather chairs, a fireplace, walls lined with books instead of the silence of my apartment. This was the life Richard would have wanted for me. The life I deserved. I'll take it, I said. Patricia blinked. Don't you want to see the upstairs or discuss the offer? Full asking price. Cash. How quickly can we close? Her eyebrows rose. With a cash offer, 2 weeks. Perfect, I said. A new chapter. By Wednesday, the paperwork was done. By Friday, I held the keys. I'd never felt more in control of my life. I hired movers and kept only what mattered. Richard's photographs, my books, a few cherished pieces of furniture. Everything else was sold or donated. 3 weeks after Desmond's birthday dinner and the invitation I'd never kept, I finally called my son. The phone call. Mom, where have you been? We expected you for dinner, then nothing. Brian was worried. I've been busy moving, I said, settling into my new leather chair while gardeners planted spring bulbs outside. Moving? What do you mean? I bought a house. A proper house? Silence. You bought a house? What kind? A lovely colonial on Maple Ridge Drive. 6 bedrooms, beautiful grounds. I'm very happy with it. Maple Ridge Drive? His voice cracked. Mom, those houses cost... Where did you get the money? I could have explained Richard's investments, the life insurance policies, the rental properties. Instead, I simply said, your father was a very wise man with money, but you said you were struggling, living in that little apartment. I chose to live simply, Desmond. There's a difference. I heard muffled voices, Brian demanding answers. When Desmond returned, his tone was careful. Well, that's wonderful, Mom. We should come see it. You should, I replied. Saturday afternoon works. The visit. Saturday arrived clear and bright. I placed fresh flowers in the hall, brewed coffee, set out pastries, though I doubted the visit would stay polite. At 2 o'clock sharp, Desmond's BMW rolled up the long driveway. Through the window, I watched them sit for several minutes. Brian's hands moving in sharp gestures, Desmond gripping the wheel. Finally, they stepped out. Brian wore what I recognized as her Impress the Neighbors outfit, a cream designer suit worth more than most monthly paychecks. Her smile was bright and calculating. Her eyes missed nothing. I opened the door before they could knock. Desmond, Brian, welcome. Desmond hugged me, his shoulders tight. Mom, wow, this is incredible. Brian swept past him, gaze darting across the entryway. Nain, what a surprise. This is quite substantial. Thank you. Would you like a tour? The inspection. For 30 minutes, she examined every detail like an appraiser. Square footage, fixtures, views. Desmond trailed behind, his expression darkening with each room. In the master suite, a vast space with a private balcony, Brian finally dropped the polite act. This is enormous, she said, running a manicured hand over the silk curtains. Much too big for one person, really. I like the space, I replied evenly. Oh, of course, she said, smile sharpening. But practically speaking, at your age, is it really safe to be rattling around in a house this size? All these stairs, all this upkeep, so isolated. Desmond shifted uneasily. Brian, I'm just being practical, she cut in. The offer. Honey, your mother is nearly 70. What if she falls? What if something happens and no one knows? Brian's tone was sweet, but every word carried an edge. I led them back to the living room, where coffee and pastries waited on my grandmother's antique table. Brian continued, still wrapped in that polite smile. The property taxes alone must be enormous, she said, choosing a croissant. And the heating, insurance, maintenance. Such a burden on a fixed income. I managed just fine, I replied, pouring coffee from the silver service Richard's parents had given us on our wedding day. Brian exchanged a glance with Desmond, then pressed on. Well, that's wonderful. But we've been thinking about our future. We're trying to start a family, and with Desmond's promotion, we've outgrown our place. I sipped my coffee, waiting. Desmond cleared his throat. What Brian means is, this house would be perfect for a growing family. So many bedrooms, a big yard for kids to play. Brian's eyes lit up. And you'd have company. You wouldn't be alone. We could help with the upkeep and expenses. Their audacity left me breathless. They were suggesting that my careful planning, my independence, had all been for their benefit. Brian warmed to the fantasy. It would be so much better for children, these schools, this neighborhood. Exactly what we want. Desmond leaned forward, a flash of the little boy I once knew. What do you think, Mom? Wouldn't it be wonderful to hear children's laughter in these rooms? They sat back, confident I'd see the wisdom of their plan. My answer. I set my cup down deliberately and met their eyes. That's an interesting proposal, I said. Brian's smile widened. I knew you'd understand. We could work out the details. You keep the master suite. We'll take the other rooms. The sunny upstairs bedroom would be a perfect nursery. You've certainly thought this through, I replied, voice calm. You just want what's best for everyone, Brian said, dripping false sincerity. It's what family does. We take care of each other. Family. The word that had been used to make me settle for crumbs while giving everything. I smiled then, truly smiled for the first time in years. You're right, Brian. Family should take care of each other. I stood, smoothing my skirt, and crossed to the window overlooking the garden. Behind me, I heard their excited whispers, already making plans for our home. The call. I need to make a phone call, I said, turning back. Would you excuse me for a moment? Brian's delighted whisper followed me down the hall. I told you she'd come around. This is going to be perfect. Perfect? Yes, just not in the way she imagined. I closed the study door and leaned against it, listening to their muffled laughter. I could picture Brian inspecting every object, my crystal vases, the paintings Richard and I collected, heirloom furniture, mentally assigning it all to herself. I picked up the phone and dialed. Margaret Chen's office, a receptionist answered. This is Name Winters. I need to speak with Margaret immediately. It's urgent. Hold music filled the room, punctuated by the sound of Brian's excitement drifting through the walls. Finally, Margaret's warm, concerned voice came on. Nan, what's wrong? I need to update my will today. We just revised everything 3 weeks ago. What changes do you need? I looked out at the garden where I'd planned peaceful mornings with books and coffee. In the window's reflection, my face was calm and sure, free of any lingering hope for their approval. I want specific language about my house, I said. State clearly that under no circumstances are my son or his wife to inherit this property. They are never to live here, never to own it, never to benefit from it in any way. Silence on the line, then Margaret's measured response. That's very specific. Yes, I said, smiling to myself. It needs to be. The decision. Name that's quite definitive. May I ask what's prompted this? Margaret's voice was calm, but I could hear the concern behind it. Through the door came Desmond's muffled voice. The master bedroom has such good natural light. You'd love the walk-in closet, Brian. They're here now, I said quietly. Already planning how to redecorate, where the children's rooms will go, how they'll help me manage the burden of home ownership. I see. Margaret's tone shifted to professional focus. Are you feeling pressured? Any sign of manipulation? No, I cut in. They're not forcing me. They're simply showing me exactly who they are, and I'm finally listening. What else would you like to specify? I thought of Brian's excited whispers, of Desmond's casual assumption that my life's work existed for his convenience. I want the house to go to Silver Connections along with everything else. And I want a clause stating that if my son or his wife even attempt to contest the will, they forfeit the right to visit the property during the charity's ownership. That's legally enforceable, Tom's, Margaret confirmed. Anything else? Yes. Draft a letter to be delivered to them after I'm gone, explaining exactly why. Would you like to dictate it now? Footsteps approached the study door, Brian's voice bright and close. They're coming to find me, I whispered. Not over the phone. Can you come here today? I can be there in an hour. Perfect. Use the back entrance through the garden gate. I'll be waiting in the sunroom. Playing the part, I composed myself and returned to the living room. Brian stood in the center, phone raised. Just getting some measurements, she said, flashing a bright smile. For furniture placement. I hope you don't mind. Not at all, I said, settling back into my chair. For the next hour, I played the role they expected. The grateful older woman, delighted by their generous offer to share my home. I nodded as Brian described her decorating ideas, smiled as Desmond pointed out where they might build a garden, even offered to show them the property line. They devoured it all, mistaking my courtesy for surrender. We should get going, Desmond finally said, checking his watch. Dinner with the Hendersons. Of course. At the door, Brian bestowed air kisses. Desmond gave a distracted hug. We'll talk more about the arrangement soon, Brian said, already inhabiting the house in her mind. There are so many details to work out, but I'm sure we can make it wonderful for everyone. I'm sure we can, I agreed. Their car disappeared down the long drive. I walked through the house with new eyes, each room they'd mentally claimed, each assumption they'd made about my gratitude. The letter. Exactly an hour later, Margaret arrived, briefcase in hand, expression steady. Show me the house, she said without preamble. I want to understand what we're protecting. I led her from room to room, recounting every detail of the afternoon. They really believe you bought this place for them? She asked as we settled in the sunroom with tea. Completely, I said. In their minds, Everything I do is meant to benefit them. My financial struggles were an inconvenience to manage. My success, an asset to claim. Margaret opened her legal pad. Let's draft the letter. What do you want them to know? I looked out at the garden, sunlight catching the leaves. I want them to understand that love isn't one-sided, I said at last. That family is not about what you can take, but what you give freely. I want them to know I saw through their performance, that I knew exactly what they thought of me. I turned back to Margaret, voice steady, and I want them to know this house will never be theirs. It will become a refuge for elders whose children see them as burdens, not blessings. A place where those forgotten by family will find community and care. Margaret's pen moved swiftly across the page, capturing every word, the final proof that this home, my home, would serve a purpose far greater than the small ambitions of those who once called themselves my family. The confrontation. What else? I told Margaret. I want them to know I had a choice, that right up until today I could have chosen differently, but they made it impossible to love them. And that isn't my failure, it's theirs. As she drafted the documents, a weight lifted from my shoulders I hadn't known I was carrying. For years, I'd blamed myself for the distance between Desmond and me, wondering what I could have done better. But the truth was clear now. It wasn't about me. It was about who they had chosen to become. People who saw others only as tools, who mistook manipulation for love, who believed they were entitled to whatever they could claim. There, Margaret said, looking up. How does this sound? She read the letter aloud. Each sentence rang with clarity and finality. No room for misinterpretation. Perfect, I said. When can you sign the updated will? Monday, she replied. Once notarized, it will be very difficult to change. Are you absolutely certain? I thought of Brian's eager whispers, of Desmond's quiet assumption that my home was his to inherit. I've never been more certain, I said. 3 days later, after Margaret left, I wandered through my house, seeing it not as the prize Brian thought she'd won, but as my sanctuary, my choice, my freedom in brick and mortar. Tomorrow, I knew Desmond would likely call to discuss moving plans. Brian would already be imagining furniture and renovations. They had no idea that with every entitled expectation, every casual dismissal of my autonomy, they were signing away any claim to my love, my money, or this house. 3 days later, the new will was signed and sealed. Their future now belonged solely to them. Without my home, without my wealth, without any hope of claiming either. The thought didn't sadden me. As the sunset turned my garden to gold, I felt only calm satisfaction. They'd made their choice. Now I'd made mine. The morning call. At 7 a.m., as I savored my first cup of coffee and watched birds gather at the feeder, the phone rang. Desmond's name lit the screen. Mom, we need to talk. Now his voice was tight, urgent. Good morning to you too, I said evenly. What's so urgent? Don't play games with me. I know what you did. I set my cup down carefully, though my heart quickened. What exactly do you think I did? The will, Mom. Margaret Chen's office called. Something about updated documents and needing to confirm the property address. Margaret had warned me about routine verification calls, but I'd hoped for more time. I see, I said. And what did they tell you? Nothing directly. But when I pressed, they said it wasn't relevant since we weren't beneficiaries. We aren't beneficiaries, Mom. Brian's sharp voice echoed in the background. Would you like to come over and discuss this? I asked. We're already on our way. The line went dead. The showdown. 20 minutes later they arrived, clearly having called from the car. Brian's face burned with anger. Desmond looked like he hadn't slept. Inside. Now, Brian snapped, pushing past me into the foyer. I followed them into the living room. They stood like prosecutors about to deliver a verdict. How could you do this to us? Brian's voice was shrill, stripped of its usual politeness. After everything we've done for you, after all our plans. What plans? I asked quietly. Don't act innocent, Desmond said sharply. You let us believe we were going to live here. You encouraged us to plan for the children, for our future. I sank into my favorite chair, the one that faced the garden. I did no such thing, I said calmly. I listened while you made assumptions. The breaking point. Assumptions? Brian's laugh was sharp as glass. You showed us around like we already lived here. You talked about children's rooms, about having family close by. I was being polite, I answered evenly. You were guests in my home. Guests? Desmond's voice cracked. I'm your son. Yes, I said, meeting his eyes. And I'm your mother. But that doesn't make my house your house, or my money your money. Brian began pacing, her heels striking the hardwood like a metronome of fury. This is insane. You're nearly 70, living alone in a house that's far too big. We offered to help, to take care of you, and this is how you repay us? By maintaining ownership of my own property, I said quietly. By lying to us, she shouted. By letting us plan our lives around something you never intended to give. I turned to Desmond. Is that how you see it too? That I lied to you. His hands tightened into fists. Mom, we need this house. My promotion comes with expectations, social obligations, and Brian's pregnant. The word escaped before I could stop it. Pregnant? Brian's hand moved to her still flat stomach, her anger shifting to smug triumph. 3 months, she said. We were going to tell you when we moved in. Make it a celebration. Another grandchild I might never know, never hold. The thought should have pierced me, but it only strengthened my resolve. Congratulations, I said simply. Brian stared incredulous. That's it? Your son is having a baby, and all you can say is congratulations. What would you like me to say? I asked. That I'm sorry? That I'll fix this? That I'll put you back in the will where you think you belong? Where we belong, I repeated, letting the words hang. Desmond stepped forward, adopting the persuasive tone he used in court. Mom, be reasonable. You don't need a house this size. The maintenance alone must be overwhelming. And with a baby coming, we really do need more space. Then buy a bigger house, I replied, with your own money. With what money? Brian snapped. Do you know what houses cost in good neighborhoods? What private schools cost? What it takes to give children the life they deserve? The life your child deserves, I corrected. That's your responsibility, not mine. Brian's face went pale with fury. You selfish, bitter old woman. No wonder your husband left you. No wonder your son can barely stand to visit. The words landed like blows, but I didn't flinch. Richard didn't leave, I said softly. He died. And if Desmond can barely stand to visit me, why would you want to live in my house? Because it's not your house, she shouted. Not really. Desmond is your only child, your only family. Everything you have should go to him automatically. That's how families work. Is it? I crossed to the mantel, touching the photograph of Richard beside pictures of Desmond as a boy. Tell me, Brian, did your parents work double shifts to pay for your college? Did they sacrifice their comfort so you could have opportunities? That's different, she said quickly. That's what parents are supposed to do. And what are children supposed to do? I asked. She faltered. Desmond answered instead. Children are supposed to be grateful. They're supposed to take care of their parents when they get old. Take care of them, I repeated. Not take from them. Not treat them as inconveniences to be managed or assets to be claimed. We never treated you like an inconvenience, Desmond protested. Really? Then why did Brian suggest I move to assisted living? Why did she tell me I would die poor and alone? Why did you sit there and let her? She was concerned for your safety, he said, face flushing. No, she was concerned about her comfort, about not having to deal with an aging mother-in-law she saw as a burden. Brian stopped pacing, eyes cold. You're twisting everything. We offered to let you stay here to take care of you. You offered to let me stay in my own house while you took it over, I said. You offered to manage my life because you decided I couldn't. Because you can't, she exploded. Look at you. Living alone, no friends, nothing to do but sit in this huge house and feel sorry for yourself. We were trying to help you by taking your house, by giving your life meaning, by letting you be part of something bigger than your pathetic little existence. The words hung in the air like poison. Desmond looked stricken, finally hearing what his wife truly thought of me. Brian, he said quietly, that's enough. No, it's not, she snapped. Your mother is punishing us for wanting better for our children. She's a jealous, vindictive old woman who can't stand to see anyone else happy. I walked to my desk and retrieved a folder I prepared that morning, copies of the new will and the letter Margaret and I had crafted. Since you're so interested in my will, I said, handing it to Desmond, You might as well know the truth. He opened it with trembling hands, Brian reading over his shoulder. Their faces shifted from confusion to shock, from shock to fury. You left everything to charity, Desmond whispered. To Silver Connections. The aftermath. Yes, they help elderly people who've been abandoned by their families, I told Brian calmly. Abandoned? Her voice had sharpened to a dangerous edge. When was the last time either of you called just to talk? I asked. When did you invite me somewhere without wanting something? When was the last time you treated me like someone you loved, instead of an obligation you resented? Desmond kept staring at the papers, his face pale. The house, the investments, everything, he whispered. Brian snatched the documents from his hands. This can't be legal. You can't just cut out your only child. There are laws about elder abuse and coercion, I said evenly, but no law requires me to leave my money to people who treat me with contempt. We'll contest this, she hissed. I smiled finally. Read the last page, Brian. Her eyes dropped to the clause Margaret insisted we include. Color drained from her face. If you contest the will, I said pleasantly, you forfeit any right to even visit this property. Ever. Even when it becomes a care center for elders. You'll be legally barred from setting foot here again. You can't do this, Desmond said, voice breaking. I'm your son. Yes, I replied, and I'm your mother. But that doesn't give you the right to my life, my money, or my home. Brian's fury boiled over. You'll regret this when you're dying alone in this house. When you have no one to care for you, you'll remember this moment and wish you'd been different. I looked at her, really looked, and saw not a polished, confident woman, but someone small and grasping, whose worth depended on what she could take. I won't be dying alone, Brian, I said softly. I'll be surrounded by people who know that blood doesn't make family. Love does, respect does, and neither of you has shown me either in years. They left. Desmond gathered the scattered papers while Brian stormed ahead. At the door, he turned back once. Mom, please, there has to be a way to fix this. There was always a way, I answered. You just never bothered to try. The door closed, their car started, and they were gone from my house and from my life. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat in the quiet, the most peaceful morning I'd had in years. 6 months later, half a year passed before I heard from them again. 6 months of the fullest, most contented life I'd lived since Richard's death. I hosted book clubs in my library, volunteered at the community center, took painting classes. My home became what it was always meant to be, not a monument to loneliness, but a place alive with conversation and creativity. On a bright spring morning, I was in the garden, planting roses when the phone rang. Hello, Mom. Desmond's voice was softer than I remembered, hesitant, almost childlike. Hello, Desmond. I was wondering if we could talk. In person, I glanced at the roses waiting to be planted, at the life I'd built without him. What about? About us. About what happened. Brian and I were having some problems. Of course they were. I'd wondered how long it would take for cracks to show once they realized my money wasn't coming to solve their difficulties. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. Could I come over? Just me. Brian doesn't. She doesn't want me to contact you. Despite everything, he was still my son. Despite the pain and the years of disappointment, a small part of me had been waiting for this call. All right, I said. This afternoon. Thank you, Mom. Really, thank you. A different homecoming. He arrived at 2 o'clock, driving the same BMW but looking somehow diminished. The confident lawyer who once demanded his inheritance now seemed older than his 38 years, tired, unsure. I met him at the door and watched his eyes move across the foyer. It looked different now. Fresh flowers from my garden on a small table, family photos lining the walls. Not just of him, but of Richard's relatives, of friends, and book club companions who had become like family. The house looks different, he said quietly. It looks lived in, I replied. Would you like some coffee? He sat in the sunroom, the same space where I had once planned his disinheritance. Afternoon light poured across comfortable wicker chairs and thriving plants. In the corner stood my new easel, a canvas half filled with the view from my bedroom window. You're painting now? He asked, nodding toward it. I always painted, Desmond, I said with a gentle smile. I just stopped hiding it. Quiet reckoning. I stopped when I married your father. I said softly, and never found the time to start again. Desmond nodded, staring into his coffee. I remember. You used to paint at the kitchen table when I was little. You have a good memory. Silence settled between us. I waited, knowing he'd come for a reason and needed to reach it himself. Brian left me, he said at last. I'm sorry. Are you? He looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Because she said you'd be happy. She said, you probably planned this somehow. I set my cup down carefully. I didn't plan your marriage ending, Desmond. I only planned to protect myself from people who saw me as a source of money. His brow furrowed. Is that really how you saw us? For a moment, I glimpsed the boy I once raised, the one who believed the world was fair. How else could I see you? When was the last time you called just to talk? The last time you visited without wanting something? He was quiet so long I thought he might not answer. Finally, in a whisper, I can't remember. Neither can I, but I did love you. I do love you. Do you? Or do you love the idea of me, the mother who sacrifices without question, grateful for whatever scraps of attention she's given? Tears filled his eyes. That's not... I never thought of it that way. I know you didn't. That's the problem. He leaned forward, hands clenched. Mom, I know I made mistakes. We both did. But I'm here now, trying to fix things. What exactly are you trying to fix? Our relationship. U.S. I miss you. Do you? I asked quietly. Or do you miss the security of knowing I was there to bail you out when life got hard? His face flushed. That's not fair, isn't it? Your wife leaves, and suddenly you remember you have a mother. Your finances tighten, and suddenly you want to rebuild our bond. The money doesn't matter. Stop. My voice got sharper than intended. Don't lie to me. Not anymore. He slumped back, defeated. Okay, yes, things are tight. The divorce is expensive. We'd counted on the inheritance. We hoped. You hoped to inherit my house and use my savings as a personal bank account, I said. When I put it that way, it sounded as harsh as the truth. He lowered his eyes. It was awful. We were awful. But I did love you, he insisted. I still do. I studied his face, searching for the practiced manipulation I'd grown used to, and found instead something unexpected. Genuine remorse. Tell me about the divorce, I said. He swallowed hard. When Brian realized the money wasn't coming, she changed. She talked about finding someone with better prospects, someone with a family who had more to offer. He gave a bitter laugh. She said I'd failed her by not controlling you. And the baby? My breath caught. The baby? She ended the pregnancy. Said she wouldn't be tied to a man who couldn't provide the lifestyle she deserved. The cruelty of it hit me like a cold wind. Whatever I thought of Brian, the loss of a grandchild I'd never meet was a grief I hadn't expected. I'm sorry, Desmond, I said quietly. That's unforgivable. She said it was your fault. That if you'd just given us the house, none of it would have happened. Do you believe that? He stared out at the garden where butterflies hovered among the roses. I wanted to. It was easier than admitting I'd married someone who only loved me for what I could give her, the same way you only loved me for what I could give you. The words hung between us like a fragile bridge. Desmond's shoulders began to shake. He was crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind I'd once feared. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said through sobs. For everything. For not defending you. For taking you for granted. For letting her treat you the way she did. For not being the son you deserved. I watched him, and something shifted in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. Desmond, look at me. He lifted his head, face blotched and wet. I need you to understand something, I said. I didn't change my will to punish you. I changed it to protect myself. I can't keep giving pieces of my life to people who think those pieces are their right instead of my gift. I know. I see that now. Do you? Or are you saying what you think I want to hear, hoping I'll change my mind about the money? The question hit him like a physical blow. I don't know. I want to say the money doesn't matter, but I can't honestly tell you losing it didn't bring me here. His honesty surprised me. I nodded. At least you're being truthful. I'm trying, he said quietly. Trying to figure out how to be the man you raised me to be, instead of the man I became. I poured more coffee, considering his words. What would that look like? I don't know, he admitted. A different kind of ending. Learning to live with less, Desmond said quietly. Maybe figuring out how to be alone without feeling sorry for myself. Calling you just to talk, not because I need something. And if I told you right now, I asked, that the will isn't changing, that you'll never inherit this house or my money, what then? He sat in silence for a long time. I guess I'd have to learn to live with that, he said at last. And maybe I'd ask if I could still visit. Not to convince you to change your mind, but just to spend time with you. Why? Because you're my mother. Because I love you, even if I've done a terrible job of showing it. Because I don't want to lose you completely. I looked at this man, my greatest joy and my deepest disappointment, and felt something I hadn't in years. Hope. The will isn't changing, Desmond. His face fell, but he nodded. I understand. You can visit if you want, I continued. If you can accept that this relationship has to be different from before. Different how? Equal. No more expectations that I exist for your convenience. No more assumptions that my love comes without conditions. No more taking without giving. I'd like to try, he said. Won't be easy. Trust is earned, not inherited. I know. I stood and looked out at the window at my roses, finely planted and beginning to bloom. There's something else. Silver Connections plans to use this house as a residential home when I can't live here alone. And you're okay with that? I'm looking forward to it, to being surrounded by people who understand what it's like to be discarded by family, and who've learned to make family out of friendship instead. Will there be room for family who want to do better? I turned to him, seeing not the entitled man who'd once demanded his inheritance, but the uncertain boy who had once trusted me completely. I suppose that depends on the family, doesn't it? He smiled, a real smile, warm and unguarded. Can I help you in the garden? I remember you used to let me plant things when I was little. I'd like that. We walked outside together, the afternoon sun soft on our backs. I felt lighter than I had in decades. The money would still go to charity. The house would still become a haven for people like me. But maybe, just maybe, it could also become a place where a mother and son learn to love each other again. Not out of obligation or expectation, but by choice. It was more than I dared to hope for, and exactly what I'd been brave enough to demand. A love worth having, or nothing at all. In the end, I'd found both. If you were in my place, what would you do? Have you ever faced a moment when you had to choose self-respect over family expectation? Share your thoughts in the comments and stay until the end screen. I've left 2 more stories there that I think will surprise you. Thank you for watching.